In this world, everyone has to pick a job once they hit a certain age, but there's this one confident guy in a school uniform who really stands out. All the other students are. He points excitedly at a massive list of jobs, showing off all the crazy possibilities waiting for them. The scene shifts, and our guy is now in basic traveler gear in a village that looks new, but he quickly realizes he knows this place by heart because after 8,000 hours of his whole life in the game flashes before his eyes, from picking his job and joining guilds to raiding those deadly dungeons. Suddenly, a painful memory from his old life hits him hard, reminding him of the days he spent endlessly grinding as a gray warrior, and he finally realizes that this was the ultimate nightmare for. He remembers staring at his screen in total horror as a message popped up, showing that his entire save file was corrupted and completely wiped out. It was all way too much to handle, and he remembers crashing onto his bedroom floor thinking he was done for right before he blacked out. But wait, he's actually standing there totally alive, noticing his body is way more ripped, and he's wearing his exact outfit from the game. This makes zero sense because losing your game data? Suddenly, a voice cuts through his panic as an old man calls him Zephyrus, making him freeze in shock since that name proves his wildest theory is actually true. The village chief snaps Zephyrus out of his daydream, telling him to get ready for the academy since he's finally 16 and needs to find a job. But Zephyrus is totally lost. He asks the chief for a second to wrap his head around things since he realizes this is exactly how the game starts, and the annoyed old man agrees to explain it all over again. Suddenly, his confusion turns into a confident grin as he tells the chief he's already packed and just needs to say his goodbyes, realizing it's crazy that his name here is Zephyrus, just like his character from the game. The chief tells him to go say thanks to all the villagers who looked after him. Suddenly, it hits Zephyrus like a ton of bricks. This is the exact moment that starts the famous, he isn't scared at all, he's actually hyped out of his mind, clenching his fists and calling this the best thing ever. As he remembers his past life spent grinding away at his, totally overwhelmed, he drops into a deep bow to thank Donkatsu and his new life for this insane second chance. He jumps into the air and screams for joy because playing Dankatsu in real life is a dream he's had forever. Once the hype dies down, he starts thinking like a pro. He knows he can't lose his cool now. He's got to dive straight into this real-life adventure. First things, he looks totally locked in and ready to go, and after running a million scenarios in his head to pick the best class for a real dungeon, he's finally heading out to get everything he needs. He's totally fired up as he slams open the weapon shop door, shouting that he's just there to drop off the lunch the owner forgot. Zephyrus steps inside and meets the huge shop owner, handing over a bento from the guy's wife and joking that the flowery pattern doesn't really match his tough vibe, but the shopkeeper just smiles and admits he's been a bit distracted lately. The shop owner notices how young Zephyrus is and asks if he's heading to the academy, so Zephyrus flashes a big grin and tells him he's actually leaving tomorrow. He's totally shocked they're leaving so soon, but then he gets a cool idea and decides to give them a little goodbye present. He hands Zephyrus a solid sword, telling him it's an old personal favorite that's still got plenty of kick. Zephyrus is totally stoked and grabs the blade, swearing to. The shopkeeper hands him a package for the armor shop owner, and Zephyrus is totally down for the job. He's strolling through the village with the package, already planning his next move because he needs to finish 3 out of 10 side quests to join the academy, and this lunch delivery is the first step to scoring that brand new sword. He checks off the armor shop delivery and snags a shiny buckler as a reward. But instead of looking for a third quest, his pro-gamer brain knows there's a way better opportunity waiting for him. He heads deep into the woods right outside the nameless starter village. He's hunting for a secret event that's easily the biggest deal in all of Dankatsu. It's super hard. He remembers his first run and how going in blind totally ruined everything. After that nightmare, he made it a rule to crush this quest first whenever he starts a new game. He looks super serious now because, suddenly, a scream for help echoes from deep in the forest and he instantly bolts toward the noise. The screams are coming from 2 terrified girls. One's on the ground while the other shakes in fear, bravely begging a hidden threat to stay back. That scream was coming from a tiny, shaking slime, the weakest monster ever. And while Zephyrus watched from the shadows, he knew he had to wait for the perfect moment to jump in and start the quest. He hid behind a tree and watched the older girl sit totally still, knowing he had to let her get ambushed first just to trigger the rescue quest. He kept his eyes locked on the beast as it slowly crept forward, but he could tell by the way it was tensing up that it was about to pounce. The slime finally pounced and the girl screamed, giving Zephyrus the perfect signal to leap out with his sword ready to strike. He ended it with one super fast strike. The monster turned into a little pile of slime jelly, and he finally cleared the hidden quest, The Girl Attacked by Slimes. Looking at the sword, it finally hit him that if he messed up, there was no load game button to save him. This was real life, and the girl just stared at him, totally confused why he suddenly froze up. He shook off the weird vibe and asked if she was okay, telling her she was safe now while realizing her pure terror felt way more real than any NPC from the game. She totally panicked and started stuttering with a bright red face, leaving Zephyrus super confused until she suddenly bowed low to thank him for all his help, and he was just relieved she finally understood. She explained she was just out looking for potion herbs and thought she was a goner, but then she gets all shy and asks him to come back to her place. Zephyrus is totally caught. She explains her home is actually an alchemy shop, and she wants to thank him there, making Zephyr stop because he doesn't remember this happening in the game at all. Realizing that this world is, he was super hyped for the invite, and while the girl was totally shocked by his energy, he started pulling her away and told her they had to go right this sec. Denkatsu, the one who was a living database of the game, there were still unknown aspects to this world. Line 3. To him, this was a fantastic prospect. He followed her into a cool little alchemy shop and his jaw dropped when he saw all the crazy potions and ingredients covering the shelves. Walking inside felt like a total blast from the past, and he realized he almost never visited this starter village alchemy shop unless it had something to do with Tankatsu. Suddenly, he realized he totally messed up and blurted out that his name was Zephyrus. The girl was super confused, asking why he was introducing himself if they were supposed to be childhood friends. Hearing the name Hannah was a total trip since she was nameless in the game, so he immediately told her he needed to use her alchemy gear right now. He pulled out some slime jelly and a bottle of gross swamp water, making Hannah freak out and warn him that mixing them would be a total disaster. She tried to warn him, but he didn't flinch and walked right up to the alchemy pot, announcing he was ready to make the biggest mistake of his life while Hannah just watched in total shock. Just as he's about to start, Hannah tries to talk him out of it one last time, nervously asking if he's really doing this since they could still bail and use a real recipe instead. She begged them with her hands held tight, giving one last warning that alchemy goes totally wrong if you use the wrong stuff, and she wasn't taking the blame for whatever disaster happened next. She's absolutely terrified as the alchemy pot starts shaking like crazy. Something super weird is about to happen, the kind of disaster that only goes down when everything goes totally wrong. While he throws his arms wide and introduces the legendary infinite slime monster, Surapo, as a massive blob bursts out of the pot, spilling jellies and magic stones everywhere while he grins and says it's time for a marathon. The sun starts to set and the floor is completely covered in slime remains, but he just keeps on grinding, taking out every new monster that pops up while Hannah watches in total shock at the massive pile of loot he's gathered. After picking up all the loot, the final count is totally insane. 721 slime jellies and 1,439 tiny magic stones. And even though Hannah feels bad for the monsters, he's got this genius little system going where the Suripo effect makes slimes multiply like crazy, letting him farm tons of loot to sell for easy money. Since he doesn't have a reel, he finishes the grind and admits he's getting bored, so he suggests calling it a day, but then his stomach suddenly growls and he's shocked by how real the hunger feels in this world. Hannah asks if he's hungry and invites him to dinner, and he's so shocked by the offer that he says yes instantly since he's totally starving. He absolutely destroys the meal, loving every bite of that home-cooked goodness and swearing to taste every delicious thing in this world before finally heading out of Hanazon. He's just chilling under the moonlight all by himself, thinking about how totally new this whole thing feels. Honestly, these normal everyday moments are super refreshing to him. Since his good vibes are totally ruined when he realizes that while the game covers his room, it doesn't give him a dime for food, and since he leaves for the academy tomorrow, he's suddenly broke and has no way to pay for his trip or even a meal. He was totally stressing over his empty pockets when the village chief suddenly started yelling at him. The old man roasted him for being out so late instead of packing for tomorrow's trip, calling. The next morning, he finished packing his gear, threw his bag on, and finally headed out the door to hit the road. He was walking down the path out of town when he suddenly saw Hannah waiting for him right up ahead. She hit him with a super hyped good morning, and after he commented on her crazy energy, Hannah suggested they just walk to school together. Her words gave him a total flashback to his school days, remembering a classmate's 16th birthday party where everyone was young and full of energy. He snapped back to reality and shouted that there was no way Hannah was 16 because she's so tiny, but she just barked back asking if being short was a crime, and that's when it hit him. In this world, she's actually his childhood friend. A huge detail the game totally skipped, and honestly, it's a total waste they left her out. He realized he went way too far and apologized fast, while a super flustered Hannah claimed she didn't mind the little ones either, even though her face was totally giving her away. They finally reached the horse wagon and tried to shake off the awkward vibes. Then Hannah said she was heading to the village chief's place, and Zephyrus totally agreed they shouldn't keep the she. The village chief sent them off with a warm smile, and once they were in the wagon, Zephyrus hyped himself up for the trip before asking Hannah how long it would actually take, since he remembered it being a quick 30-second skip in the game. She happily says it'll take 10 days, and Zephyrus is totally stunned. This world is seriously insane, and he slumps down, wishing he had a phone or a console to survive the... Zephyrus lets out a massive victory cry as he finally steps back onto the main campus of the Labyrinth Academy. The last 10 days were a total nightmare. And for a guy from the modern world, living without a phone was such a struggle that he lost count of how many times he wished he could just hit. He keeps going totally wild with his celebration, and even though Hannah is dying of embarrassment and begging him to stop, he just flashes a huge smile and says they need to enjoy this hype together. She tries to snap him back to reality since the big entrance ceremony is tomorrow, and he still has to unpack his dorm, but he's way too hyped and just wants to ride this high a little longer. The next day, Zephyrus and Hannah show up at the academy in their fresh uniforms, ready for the big welcome ceremony that kicks off their journey to get jobs, master skills, and level up. The principal, this old guy with a huge white beard, gets up to address the crowd. He tells everyone their first mission is to unlock their official jobs in just 1 month. For now, once the ceremony wraps up, Hannah asks Zephyrus if he's picked a major yet, and he tells her he's already locked in the dungeon combat course before asking what she's planning to do. She's aiming for dungeon production and alchemy with magic potions as a backup. But Zephyrus realizes they'll barely see each other since this academy is a massive city for two. He's totally shocked she's becoming an alchemist, but he quickly tells her they can still hang out and even asks her to team up for some dungeon crawling, leaving Hannah completely stunned because why on earth would a crafter ever go into a dungeon? She's totally freaking out because crafters aren't built for scary dungeons. But he tells her she'll never survive the deep levels alone, promising to be her shield and hold it. He's grinning ear to ear about their new partnership, and even though a blushing Hannah calls him pushy, she still shakes on it. She's super worried that just taking classes won't be enough to actually become an alchemist since you need raw talent to awaken. But Zephyrus seems to know a secret. His crazy confidence catches her off guard and she demands to know how he can be so sure. He tells her straight up that it's because she spammed slimes like crazy, knowing the secret requirements for the alchemist job are using the skill 200 times, making 100 of the same item, and having one epic fail. But right then, the instructor calls for silence to start the job evaluations. He sees the perfect opening and flashes her a thumbs up to show she's got this, but Hannah is still totally freaking out as they get to the evaluation table. The testing keeps rolling as the other students step up one by one to see what classes they're going to get. A bit later, this spiky-haired guy starts cheering like crazy, leaving Hannah and the others totally stunned because he just hit the jackpot with a super rare job. Everyone's hype turns into total shock the second the job is revealed. Muscle Warrior. Zephyrus starts screaming, asking if this is just some big joke, but the crowd is losing it because his loud freakout catches the eye of a blonde, blue-eyed girl with pointy ears nearby, who calmly tells him he's scaring everyone and explains why things are actually getting so wild. He awkwardly rubs his neck and says sorry for the noise, explaining that he just couldn't keep it together since the whole situation was so wild. But he gets totally distracted by how she looks, staring at this blonde, blue-eyed girl he doesn't recognize from the game at all. After spotting her fancy hair clip, he figures the elf girl Sierra introduces herself and says she's joining the dungeon exploration major, while Hannah shouts out that she's heading for the alchemy department in dungeon production. Zephyrus, then. Draft. He starts thinking out loud, saying muscle warriors are only for weirdos since they get weaker the more gear they wear, so calling it a top-tier job is a total mistake. Hannah can't believe it and yells that there's no way that job is popular, but Sierra stays totally chill and confirms it's actually a huge deal. While he's soaking all that in, he turns to Sierra and asks if anyone has actually cleared the high-level dungeons in this world yet. She explains that dungeons go all the way to the top, but muscle warriors are only good for the early stages, and even the upgraded steel version starts to fail once the levels get really high. Everything finally clicks for Zephyrus, and he smirks as he realizes this world just doesn't get how awesome Doncats are, so he asks Sierra if that even counts the steel muscle warriors, and she tells him it totally does. He suddenly starts laughing like a maniac, totally scaring the girls, and yells that it's a total crime to live in such a cool world and not explore Donkatsu, while some He flashes a cocky grin and swears he's going to show everyone what real dankatsu is all about, just as the judge calls up the next student who's holding a tiny winged creature. Zephyrus spins around to Hannah and starts acting all extra, telling her she's got to become an alchemist. A super confused Hannah asks if that class is even a real thing, but Zephyrus promises her it's 100% legit. With his confidence pushing her forward, she slowly creeps toward the evaluation table, looking totally stressed out and fidgeting like crazy. Her jaw dropped when the word alchemist popped up right in front of her, and she was so hyped and nervous that she slammed that confirm button, knowing her dream was finally coming true. Zephyrus flashed Sierra a confident thumbs up and told her to leave it all to him, bragging that he was going to snag the best job possible and show everyone what he's really made. He was totally right to be cocky because a massive hologram from Dankatsu suddenly popped up with over 20 jobs. And as everyone stared in shock, Zephyrus just smirked knowing he looked totally hyped about his big plan, while Hannah just stood there with her jaw on the floor, shocked by how massive this was and the crazy claim he just made. Right nearby, a red-haired kid was flexing about how much he'd grinded to unlock all those jobs, while the headmaster and a teacher looked over a report and spotted something weird. Zephyrus stepped up to the terminal himself, and the whole crowd started whispering and pointing at the screen because his scores were totally insane and his rank was something they'd never even heard of. He turned to his friends and called the list a total goldmine of jobs, telling them to keep their eyes peeled so he could show them what Dankatsu was really made of. While the headmaster actually called him out by name, saying that since he qualified for so many insane jobs, it was going to take forever to pick one, while the official nearby just stood there with his jaw. The headmaster kept going, saying the school researches all these secret jobs, especially one legendary rank that's basically a god-tier all-rounder with insane stats and mastery over everything from magic to healing. Right then, the system finally made its choice. A screen popped up in front of Zephyrus, telling him he just got a brand new class. It was the hero class. And he stood there in total silence until the instructor finally started cheering for him. She admitted that in 60 years of teaching, she'd never actually seen anyone land the hero job. Then his piece was totally wrecked when a mob of students swarmed him, everyone screaming for his attention. One guy yelled for him to join Blossom's Radiance to start his own harem, whilst he, totally freaked out by the crazy recruitment war, he could only give a nervous smile as they rushed him out of the dangerous dorms and into a super safe, high-end noble house. Later that night, the headmaster was chilling with a girl named Phyllis over some tea. And even though he felt bad for her tough situation, she told him she'd totally asked for this. The headmaster asked her if she'd take charge of Zephyrus. He thought that since she's young, she'd actually understand him better than any adult could. Zephyrus hits the floor drenched in sweat, realizing his new teacher David is a total beast who's going to force him to become a massive musclehead, and he's so terrified that he's actually thinking about making a run for it. Phyllis actually set this whole mess up, insisting he needed hardcore training and a teacher by his side before hitting any dungeons, and even though she feels a bit guilty, he remembers that classes don't start for a whole month, and even though passing lets him raid dungeons, the thought of being a hero stuck at level 0 for that long is driving him absolutely insane. Seeing he was itching to get going, Phyllis told him every second counts and that he could apply to start early, so she hooked him up with a teacher instantly, and since things were moving so fast, that one choice landed him right back in this nightmare, where David screams that training is the only way to level up and orders him to run a crazy 100 million laps, leaving Z. He's grinding for a reason. In the game version of Dankatsu, becoming a hero instantly made you level 5 and unlocked the tutorial, but here he has to earn every bit of XP manually. It finally clicks that if he can hit level 5 another way, this brutal workout is a total waste of time, so he gets fired up and knows exactly what his next move is. He gets his plan moving by calling Hannah to his room and telling her they're going to farm slimes, an easy job where they just spawn and wreck weak monsters to level up. He tells a shocked Phyllis that he and Hannah hit level 6 in just 30 minutes by grinding slimes, but since slimes give such low XP, they've already hit their limit. She checks their stats and is totally shocked that Zephyrus hit level 6 and Hannah reached level 2 in just one night. Zephyrus asks if he can finally start the practical classes, and Phyllis tells him he's good to go and that she'll be right there with him. Zephyrus is totally hyped, standing in front of the dungeon, and while they wait for Professor Phyllis, he gets straight to the important stuff, spending his stat points. After hearing his plan, Hannah shyly asks for some tips, and he's totally down to help since a pro alchemist is a must-have for any guild. So she jumps at. His face turns dead serious as he promises to help her out, but he makes it clear that the final choice is totally up to her. She tells him that calling her own shots is the only way to live her life. And feeling totally hyped, Hannah thanks him and swears she's going to give that dungeon everything she's got. Her sweet confession totally catches him off guard. And even though he thinks she's beautiful, he shuts down those feelings because she looks way too young. He double-checks if He goes into full focus mode, his hands flying like he's using a ghost computer, and right as he celebrates his win, Hannah reminds him they've got to get moving. While they're walking, she asks if she even needs to learn how to fight. He tells her that alchemists are basically just meant for crafting items. He says it's way better to. They stop talking just as they reach this massive building with all these arches. He explains that this is the beginner dungeon, basically the tutorial level, and it's the whole reason the academy was. Right inside, Professor Phyllis welcomes them with a smile and asks if they're hyped for their first big quest. Then she drops some crazy news about a senior student who scored super rare samurai girl. Both students give the thumbs up that they're ready to roll. Their status screens pop up out of nowhere. We've got Hannah, a level 6 alchemist, and Zeph. He steps through the portal into a massive sunny world of hills and mountains, breathing in the fresh dungeon air as he announces he's finally back in this place that feels brand new all over again. His eyes lit up with pure hype because he'd dreamed of seeing a real dungeon forever, and this place looked insane. But Phyllis told him to chill since they were still in class, while Hannah She kicked off the lesson by explaining that this starter dungeon is basically a tutorial with no loot or traps to worry about, so all they have to do is focus on smashing monsters, and both students nodded to show they were ready. After the briefing, he spotted a tiny slime monster and asked teacher Phyllis if he could take it out, so she told him to stay focused while he finished it off in one hit and found a pouch of sticky rice inside. That first fight was a total rush, and he couldn't stop grinning like a maniac because he was officially hooked and ready to start the hunt. After taking out a few more slimes, he said it was finally Hannah's turn to step up, but Phyllis asked the young alchemist if she was really okay or if she needed to learn how. She charged forward with zero hesitation, planted her feet, and let out a massive shout as she slammed her heavy mace right into that unsuspecting slime. The hit lands perfectly, and Hannah stares at her hands in total shock, screaming that she actually did it. Zephyrus starts clapping and cheering for her, but Phyllis is just standing there completely stunned, wondering what kind of insane move that even was. She totally crushed it, and after grabbing 23 items and clearing the grasslands like a pro, Zephyrus joked that she's officially a slime-slaying machine who's even better. Just as they stepped into the new zone, his intuition skills suddenly spiked, and his face went pale as a massive shadowy figure lunged at them from the trees. He felt a massive threat approaching, but out popped a totally harmless, giant rabbit. After taking it out, Phyllis started prepping it for stew just like their teacher suggested, and while Zephyrus and Hannah were dying of laughter, she just told them to quit playing and keep moving. They kept diving deeper into the dungeon, blowing past the tree monsters on the 3rd floor and the bird beasts on the 4th, where even the baby chicks were no match for them. It didn't take long for them to reach the final floor's massive double doors, and Zephyrus was actually feeling bored because he knew it would be harder to lose than to win at this point. Phyllis totally called him out for joking around and told him to focus on the insane boss battle, so Zephyrus quickly said sorry. She reveals the first boss is just a single basic goblin, and Phyllis explains that since they were brave enough to step inside, they've basically already won, making Hannah feel like it'll be a total piece of cake while Zephyrus asks for the gameplay. He cooked up a plan on the spot and told them to stick to it, deciding he'd jump in first as the tank to distract the boss and see what Hannah was up against. Then he used his taunt skill to make that bare-handed goblin come right at him. The goblin didn't even look at him and just sprinted right past, lunging straight for Hannah. But Zephyrus was totally shocked when she reacted instantly and sent the monster flying with a massive kick. Since they wrecked the boss so easily, Phyllis congratulated them and said they're officially ready to hit dungeons without a teacher, while Zephyrus stepped up to finish off the dazed goblin. Hannah starts thanking him like crazy for the help, and that's when Zephyrus realizes he didn't even need to use his ultimate skill, Brave/Hero's Sword. Their teacher just grinned, loving how much fire he had in him, so the 19-year-old gave him one last shout-out before heading back to the academy and leaving Zephyrus to keep grinding in the dungeon. He asks if Hannah is coming along, and she's totally hyped, telling him that's the whole reason she stayed behind. As they head toward a massive swirling portal, He says he's hyped to score some epic loot and plans to grind non-stop until he hits level 10 so he can finally enter the beginner dungeon. Just like that, they warp straight into the deepest boss room. And while the goblin is still freaking out, he pulls out his level 1 hero sword to finally unleash that brave/move he's been waiting to use. Hannah is left gasping for air and asking what just happened, but a hyped-up Zephyrus tells her that wasn't his usual move. It was the ultimate power of a real hero. He walks her up to a random brick wall, puts his hand on it, and says, "This is the spot," leaving Hannah totally lost until he starts explaining his real plan. While he's talking, a swirling portal pops up right on the floor, and when Hannah asks if he's using it to go back to the start, he just points at them. Deep in the dungeon, Phyllis feels something creeping up and asks if they're alone, but Zephyrus tells her to get back because it's way too dangerous. Then he charges up and slams his sword down so hard the whole floor just explodes. A massive hole gets blasted into the floor, and as Zephyrus looks inside, Phyllis lets out a quick scream before immediately getting her act together. Under the broken floor, a massive gold chest is glowing, and Phyllis gasps as she shows Zephyrus the crazy find. When she asks how he knew, Zephyrus strikes a pose and brags about his evil eye skill. But then he drops the act and admits he just saw it in an online guide. Her eyes are totally sparkling as she asks to open the chest, but before he can even answer, she shouts that since she found it first, she's the one opening it. He watches her shaking with hype, knowing she can't resist rare loot after hearing about Slim Respawn, especially since these gold chests are top tier and hold the rarest items in the game. Alice is totally hyped, even though Zephyrus already knows what's inside and now she's finally ready to heave that heavy lid open. She pulls out the first item with a shout of joy, and it's a spatial storage bag. She explains that their old academy bags were super small, but this new one has 100 dill. Next up is a tiny glass marble, and they realize this new bag lets them finally grab all the loot they had to leave behind, making Zephyrus give a huge, hyped-up thumbs up. He picks up the marble and realizes it's a performance limit orb, explaining that it's used to boost gear that's already maxed out and will be super important for the late game. He locked in on the real reason he even showed up. He finally scored the rare loot, holding up a glowing advanced job change ticket with a sick dragon symbol right on the front. He took a second to remember how the world system actually works. Out of over 1,000 total jobs, beginners can only pick from about 400 basic ones. Even the legendary hero class. He smirked while clutching the ticket, knowing that even if the plan sounded easy, just getting his hands on it was a total nightmare. He told Phyllis this ticket was a super rare 1% drop from mid-level bosses that he'd been grinding like crazy for, and when she asked if that was it, he just gave her a cocky grin and told her to keep it safe and just watch. Her eyes popped and her jaw dropped as she realized just how huge his victory really was. A bit later in the forest area of the 3rd floor, Phyllis baits a monster right toward them and shouts a warning, but Zephyr, rocking his brand new armor, just tells her he's got this. Flashing a cocky grin, he jumped right in front of the monster, handling his new sword and shield like a total pro and shouting that he'd already won. Phyllis was geeking out over how sick his new gear looked, and looking at his shiny silver sword, shield, and divine armor, he totally agreed. This Sky Series set they were tearing through the dungeon at record speed. After scoring another gold chest full of food, they finally hit level 10. Now they've finally got what it takes to leave. He tells her they should head back and maybe grab some ingredients on the way, and Phyllis is totally down for it. The second they step back into the city, every other student's eyes are glued to them. The rumors start flying the second he walks in, with everyone recognizing him as that insane first-year prodigy they've all been hearing about. They're staring at his high-tech Sky Series gear, convinced some huge company is sponsoring him, and while Phyllis is totally stressed out, Zephyrus is actually pumped because looking this elite means no one will bother him with annoying party invites. She sighs and tells him that everyone is staring, but he just stays cool and warns her that looking nervous will only make people want to come over. Ignoring the stares, Phyllis points to a massive building and says it's time to cash in their loot at the General Purchase Association, the Academy's own merchant guild where explorers sell all their dungeon treasures. Inside, he tells Phyllis the plan. They need to get famous fast so the guild starts giving them better deals. Even though the guild is lowballing them right now, it's their only option. Melissa Senpai is working the counter, and her jaw drops when she realizes she's looking at the legendary hero. She's totally stoked to meet him, especially since this guild is where dungeon. He admits it's only his first day of dungeon class, leaving Melissa totally stunned by his speed since he's got so much time left. And then Phyllis steps up to hand over her items too. Melissa is totally hyped, and says he's going to be a legend for clearing that beginner dungeon on his first try, though Zephyrus wonders if she's being for real or just using her custom. After crushing their first dungeon and making some serious bank, the two of them head home feeling totally awesome. The next day, he hit Guild Street C ready to scout the market and make some big moves, but he was stopped dead in his tracks when someone suddenly stepped right in front of him. A super hyped-up first-year girl suddenly blocks his path and begs him to join her new guild, leaving the red-haired student totally shocked that Zephyrus is already getting scouted. She didn't even wait for him to answer before snapping at him to pay attention. Zephyrus spotted her silver tiara and realized she was a princess, which totally explained why he saw her as nothing but a spoiled princess. But in a world full of dungeons, he didn't really care about her attitude, so as she stood there waiting, he finally got ready to give. He hit her with a hard "no way," leaving the princess totally stunned with her jaw on the floor. She totally flipped out, calling him a jerk for rejecting her after she went through all that trouble to recruit him. But he just kept his cool and told her he had bigger plans. He walked off, thinking about how levels rule everything in this world, and he realized she was just another Dan Katsu person who's totally obsessed with her rank. Zephyrus turns back with a cocky grin and introduces himself as a level 10 hero, demanding to know her level and bragging that even a princess can't outrank a hero at Labyrinth Academy, leaving her totally speechless. He crossed his arms and laid down the law, telling her that if she wants him to listen, she's got to get a top-tier job and level up her stats first, leaving the princess. She finally got her act together and threatened that he'd be sorry when he came begging to join her guild, but Zephyrus just shut her down by saying he never wanted to join anyway, leaving her totally fuming. He just stood there while the princess totally lost it, claiming he was already joining her guild and warning him that he better say yes the second she comes back. She stomped off in a rage, but he just chilled and wished her luck, only to realize a second later while watching some birds that he totally forgot to ask for her name. Shaking off the drama, he headed down the packed Sea Guild Street to check out all the cool stuff in the Adventurers District. He switched his focus to making bank, noticing that low-level loot prices were spiking now that the freshmen were out hunting, since the older students were just buying materials from the rookies instead of grinding. Right as he finished his plan, a girl with long twin tails walked up and asked if he was the guy hitting beginner dungeons and what he was just muttering about. He totally freaked out, thinking security was about to bust him, so he nervously asked the girl if she was lost and where her parents were. She introduced herself as Marie from the C-Rank Guild Whoppin' Seal sticker and said she needed to talk, while Zephyrus spotted her green badge and realized she was a second. Marie explained that while fighter guilds just pay in cash, her crafting guild rewards you with the actual gear they make, and he was totally vibing with that. Now he was actually interested. She wasn't acting like a total fangirl or trying to sign him up, so he knew this was something else. It was probably just a delivery job from inside the guild hall. Marie excitedly hands Zephyrus a shopping list, and after picturing all the epic gear he could craft, he's totally down to help. She takes a closer look and realizes the list is actually massive, and even though it's all basic stuff, she has to hunt through 3 different areas to find it while Marie just stands there looking. He's looking totally confused, but Marie just sips her drink and reads him like a book, wishing her own guild members were half as smart as this rookie who's already gathered a mount. The secret's out because rumors are flying that he's the legend who crushed the beginner dungeon record just yesterday, and Zephyrus is totally shocked by how fast the news spread. Marie is hyped about his new fame, but he's actually super stressed by all the attention. Even so, he admits her knowing everything makes finding the materials a total breeze, and she agrees but warns him that finding specific items is a total nightmare with all that random loot, and most adventurers who take these jobs just end up failing. He asks about the guild's reward, so Marie just winks and hands him a fancy little box containing a special patch sticker with 10 uses. He stares at the item and it hits him. This patch seal sticker is official gear straight from the production guild. Harry explains that the sticker is basically a custom skin to make your gear look awesome without losing any stats, and after roasting his mismatched outfit, she promises to fix his fit, which he's totally hyped for because looking cool is a huge deal. He gets it right away. 10 free uses is a massive deal since changing designs usually costs a fortune, and Marie just smirks knowing he's definitely going to need them later. He gives Marie a solid handshake, totally hyped to go along with her plan. A bit later, Zephyrus takes on a delivery quest and teams up with a new guy who tells her she'll be the muscle while he handles all the heavy lifting and storage. Since his attack power isn't great, he'll carry the loot while she smashes the monsters, and with the plan ready, he says it's time to jump right in. He's scouting for a low-level dungeon where the monsters are super slow and drop tons of loot, making it the perfect playground for beginners. With their minds made up, They dive into the tropical forest dungeon, and Zephyrus instantly takes out a monster to snag a rare item called Quill's Fury. Anna asks if he's really okay getting XP as a courier, but he tells her the goal is just to hit level 20 for those tier 2 skills. So the slow start? She asks how he knows so much, and he just gives her a cheeky grin, telling her she can find all the answers at the Academy's massive library. He tells her he actually hit the books hard at the start while she was stuck fighting, and now he's going to go hunt down any secrets he might have missed. Zephyrus cuts the chatter and tells everyone they need to be back by dark, so they push ahead to the 5th floor where Anna and the alchemist hit level 14. But Zephyrus. The next morning, Marie tracks him down in total shock, asking if he really hit the 5th layer of the jungle in a single day while calling him Oni-chan and teasing him for how he talks. She's totally shocked by the massive pile of perfect materials he brought. And even though it's only a fraction of the total, Zephyrus is soaking up the praise and promising to crush the entire tropical forest dungeon by tonight because being a hero is just that awesome. He flexed on Marie about knowing every route and monster like a walking cheat code, and she was totally stunned because most parties take a full week to reach the boss while he was clearing. Marie saw her opening and asked to check with her guild about some extra materials she needed, making Zephyrus curious since they weren't even part of his current quest. He was totally down for the side quest and promised to grab everything she needed, as long as she'd price out his loot when he got back, and Marie was hyped to make the deal. She gave him a wink to show she was totally down, promising to study the market so he gets paid big time for his hard work, and reminded him that having the right connections is a total game. Later, Zephyrus and Anna are decked out in full armor outside the academy as he tells her they're hitting floors 6 through 9 for materials and taking down the final boss, and she's totally hyped for it. When they reached the dungeon entrance, they were totally shocked to see other students hanging around, which A said had never happened before, while Sierra noticed their gear looked way too powerful for these early levels. They suddenly spot this massive, loud-mouthed instructor yelling at a line of shirtless guys to go wreck monsters with their gains, promising he'll be watching their every move. The teacher's voice boomed as he officially named them the Muscle Warriors, and the whole class roared back together, totally hyped to accept their new title. He gave the guy a massive slap on the back and hyped up his new job class as super strong, while Zephyrus just watched in total shock, wondering what there was to even celebrate. Zephyrus tries to hurry Marie along, but she gets distracted, so he smacks her hand and tells her to look away, making her let out a surprised little yelp. Their focus snaps as Marie calls that whole scene both awesome and totally creepy, and a wiped-out Zephyrus can only nod in agreement. But Marie is so freaked out by a student turning into someone like Instructor David that she tells him they need to change their plan right now. Zephyrus figures the Muscle Squad has probably finished the starter dungeon by now, so when Marie asks if they've got competition, he tells her they're still way ahead, but can't afford to get lazy. Zephyrus is totally fired up now, telling the team they've got to grind levels if they want to stay ahead of those muscle heads. He looks back at her progress, seeing how she went from just collecting items to hunting down scary monsters in a real battle zone. Over at the gym, Instructor David is laughing his head off because his trainee's muscles already hit level 5, and Zephyrus can't even imagine the crazy workout they had to survive to get there. He stops worrying about his rivals and points ahead, declaring they're hitting the 10th floor, while Marie gasps as a massive shadow beast appears. They've officially reached the boss room. The road to the boss was packed with annoying mini-fights. Zephyrus led the way, smashing through enemies and grabbing all the loot. Marie followed close behind with her sword out, he looks totally confident, but as they hike through the forest, he starts panicking and wonders if they're actually strong enough to take down the boss. He shakes off his nerves and turns to calm his friend down. With a big smirk, he says that even if Hannah can't handle it, he can totally crush the boss by himself. Marie looks. To prove he's the real deal, he shows off his secret power and explains he's been dumping all his points into strength and health just for this fight. He's even rocking them. With the plan all set, he gives her one last pep talk about how they've got nothing left to lose, and now that Marie's finally hyped up, they head straight for the cat. He and Marie stepped through the gate and came face to face with the tropical forest dungeon boss, the bear anteater, a massive beast that surprisingly doesn't even use its tongue to fight. She's totally lost and asks if it's a bear or an anteater, so he tells her it's an anteater that acts way more like a bear. She noticed something super weird. The monster's attacks can only get through the main gate, but she's still freaking out that they won't be fast enough to dodge them. Even though she was worried, Marie suddenly decided this was the perfect spot to stop. She insisted they needed a massive meal before the boss fight, and Zephyrus was so surprised he just went. He sat down to eat and was totally blown away by the rice ball she gave him, yelling that the scrambled eggs and grilled chicken inside were amazing while Maurice watched with a big smile. He soaked it all in as realizing he was super lucky to have a cute girl cooking for him for once, and now he was totally fired up and ready to go. Now that he was full and totally hyped, he stood up and said it was go time as they all turned to face the waiting bear anteater. He told Marie to stick to the plan and get the healing potions ready. And after she warned him to stay safe, he gave a confident nod and used his skill to lure the monster right toward him. The skill kicks in and he charges right away, landing a brave slash with his hero sword, but the bear anteater fights back with a huge swipe of its sharp claws. Those claws slammed into his shield with insane force, sending a massive shock through his whole body. It was a total wake-up call, and for the first time, he realized that getting hurt in. He brushed off Marie's freakout and told her the scratch was no big deal, realizing that since HP soaks up most of the pain in a real dungeon, there was totally no reason to panic. Just as he's figuring things out, the massive beast roars and stands up for more, so he braces himself and slams his shield up to block the next heavy hit. His skills were finally off cooldown, so he planted his foot and got ready to hit back hard. He charged straight in and landed a massive hit that absolutely wrecked the bear anteater. That hit left the beast wide open, and as it stumbled back, Marie started cheering for him. After the fight, he admitted to Hannah that things were way more intense than he expected, but then he immediately started bragging about how chill he was and asked if she saw how cool he looked. They slapped a high five as a system alert confirmed they were the first to beat the tropical forest dungeon, meaning some serious rewards were headed their way. A shiny Conqueror's medal dropped to prove they won, making Zephyrus super hyped to show it off for his collection while Hannah guarded a silver chest overflowing with boss loot. They scored 5 boss drops, 8 monster drops, and a silver box, and after Hannah opened it to find a high potion, she asked if they were going home, but he said they had to. Right before they headed out, he leaned in and whispered that they were playing a secret game she had to keep quiet. And while she was still totally caught off guard, he just told her to watch as he led her toward a glowing archway hidden in the trees. He suddenly screams, "Brave/Hero's sword," and lets loose a massive attack, the blinding light making Hannah jump back in total shock. She looks around totally confused because the boss is completely gone, leaving nothing behind but a safe circular platform on the ground. They're staring at the empty air when suddenly, that naked anteater boss respawns right in front of them, just as the teleport circle vanishes. Hannah's totally losing it because the teleportation circle is gone, but Zephyrus is just grinning like a maniac, shouting that the boss marathon is starting and she needs to use Slare-Up right now. Zephyrus holds his shield high against a giant bear anteater monster, while Hannah blasts it with magic, yelling for the bees to take the hit. He lunges forward with a massive shout, slicing his blade right through the monster's side and sending it stumbling back from the power of the hit. That hit is a total finisher, and the bear anteater explodes in a massive flash of light, shattering into 1,000,000 tiny pieces. Zephyrus pumps his fist, hyped that they finally cleared it on their 12th try, and Hannah's stoked because it was their fastest run yet. Zephyrus is totally getting the hang of the boss's moves, and even Hannah is jumping into the fight now. She's all smiles and gives him all the credit, calling him a total beast for rushing the boss while she distracted it, especially since she admits that monster is actually pretty terrifying. Hannah finally spills the secret to their crazy grinding. It's actually a famous glitch where you run back to the rescue point and smash the gate to make the boss respawn. She explains they're totally out of mana and want to bail, but Hannah points to a treasure chest and says they should just head back 1 floor instead of leaving the dungeon for good. He asks if they're breaking the rules, but then says it's totally fine since they have the dungeon all to themselves, promising they'll use the real teleport circle when they leave. He gives a quick wink and a thumbs up to show he's totally got this, while Hannah watches him closely as he cracks the chest open. Her eyes go wide as she pulls out a super fancy bracelet she found inside and asks Zephyrus if he has any idea what it is. She's cheering with joy as Zephyrus holds up the shimmering guest's bracelet, a super rare item that beginners almost never get their hands on. He asks what it does, so she explains the bracelet lets you join a party as a guest, admitting she's always wanted one since it's the ultimate beginner prize. Way better than any gold chest. He asks if she remembers those buff dudes from earlier, and reminds her that a normal team only has 5 members, and that's when it finally clicks for her. She finally realizes she was right. That bracelet lets a 6th person join the squad as a guest, which explains why Instructor David was helping out that other team. Having an extra teammate is a massive win, but there's a catch. Guests can't actually fight and they'll get kicked out of the group automatically if certain things happen. Her eyes totally light up when she realizes this rare item is worth a fortune, and he tells her she's right, since the academy pays so much for them that they almost never hit the bid. They decide to keep their discovery a total secret, so he plans to head back into the dungeon, smash some weak mobs to get his mana back, and keep farming that boss while Hana cheers him on. After waiting 30 minutes with his blade ready, he heads back to Layer 6 to grind for materials for 2 hours until he hits Layer 9. And with his magic finally recharged, he's ready. He ends the fight with one last epic swing, officially calling it quits on the boss runs for the day. She hypes him up for working so hard and asks if that last silver chest had any good loot, so he wipes away some sweat and admits he's totally out of mana. But he just smiles and tells her she's been thanking him non-stop ever since they found that bracelet. He figures the 5th silver box from the guest bracelet is going to show up any second. Hana's hyped because she just scored a rare flame rod. This weapon is a total flex since it barely ever drops. He hypes up the new gear since it's a beast against ghosts, but Hana's actually sad to ditch her old weapon Machen, so Zephyrus just snatches it. She stares at the new rod, worried it'll snap if she hits anything, while Zephyrus yells from off-screen for her to stay away from him. After a while, he decides they'll head home once they finish gathering materials, but then he spots a massive bear anteater pelt, the rarest boss drop in the game that he's key. He does the math and realizes this stuff is a total goldmine since it makes perfect light armor and sells for a massive price. He rolls up the massive fur and says they've finally got it all, and as he thanks her, Hana wipes her forehead, looking totally exhausted but glad the day is over. On the walk back, Zephyrus thinks about how much they crushed it today, revealing he's already level 18 while Hana happily cheers that she's hit level 15. He figures since she finally hit level 16 they can stop grinding the dungeon and just focus on crafting, which totally shocks Hana right before a wild new idea hits him. He sets their new goal to hit level 20, asks if they should head home, and a super hyped Hana agrees, saying they definitely have to hit the dungeon together again tomorrow. Her being so real totally catches him off guard, and he actually blushes once he realizes she really wants to keep being partners. He said yes, and they both headed away from the glowing dungeon exit, finally wrapping up their big hunt. When they hit the next spot, Hana was totally floored, her eyes practically popping out of her head. She looked at the massive mountain of loot Zephyrus gathered and asked how he pulled it off, but he just smirked and called it a trade secret, making her realize he's got some tricks he's keeping to himself. She asked if he was going to sell the boss loot too. He said he'd take his order but was definitely keeping that giant bear anteater fur. Hana's eyes totally lit up. He told her he was selling everything else but wouldn't budge on this one piece, so she begged him for it, arguing that custom fabric looks way better and lasts way longer. Instead of selling the loot, he held it up and asked her for a massive favor, use it to craft some epic armor for the whole team. She lit up with a wink and jumped at the job, saying it was great practice for her career, and her insane confidence actually caught him off guard. When night fell, he told her he was totally relying on her, so she broke down the plan. First they'd square up today's cash, then tomorrow they'd get his. The next morning, he flashed a screen showing a massive 120,000 and grinned, telling her, "Check it out, this is what we pulled in yesterday." They sat down and he broke it down. 120,000 meals total, which meant her cut was a massive 60,000. Hana just stared at him and he taps his screen to finalize the deal, but Hana is losing it over how much money she's getting since he did all the heavy lifting. So he just shrugs and asks what she's going to spend it on, or if he should just take it back himself. Her whole vibe flips instantly as she grabs the cash, shouting about how much she needs it and thanking him like crazy. While they're walking, he's thinking about how crazy high-tech his student handbook is, when suddenly both their phones chime with a notification that $60,000 just hit their accounts. He explains that this device is way more than just a student ID. It handles their lunch money, schedules, and even lets them text each other. Everyone calls it a smartphone, and it's actually a super rare ancient relic, though it only works while they're on campus. Then he remembers their schedule and tells her they should hit up Marie Senpai's shop before they head into the dungeon tomorrow. She's totally down, and Hana even offers to handle dinner since she made a massive meal, making him smile as he realizes her hanging out in his room has become their new normal. They sit down for a massive fancy dinner, and he almost says something about what's going on, but he changes his mind and just digs in. Now, decked out in his official academy uniform, he stands up and says it's time to go grab Hana and hit the shop. While Hana gets measured for her new gear, he pulls out his student handbook to plan his next move, thinking it's finally time to start linking up with other guilds. Suddenly, he spots a massive news alert on the school's bulletin board about a brand new group called the Muscle Part. Somewhere else, the red-haired student stares at the same news on his phone, looking totally shocked and wondering if they're actually being serious. While Hana's taking measurements, she notes that these freshmen are actually super talented, just like her hero brother. And she's even heard that 5 of them are teaming up as a squad of muscle warriors. Phyllis finds the whole thing pretty interesting, but Hannah keeps going, sharing Zephyrus's blunt take that being a muscle warrior is a trash job, and anyone who wants it is totally out of their mind. Phyllis is super curious and asks Hannah if the class is a total joke because they suck in high-level dungeons, or if it's just because the only upgrade is the steel muscle warrior. Anna admits that the way these muscle warriors are treated is totally messed up, and she's low-key impressed, wondering how her brother even knows all this stuff. They start debating if this class is actually overrated, since they always fall apart and show their true weakness during the high-level dungeon raids. Hannah explains her warning, saying you can't just hide behind your past connections, and since she's been acting so proud, she's actually terrified of how hard she'll crash if she... Willis takes the advice to heart and gets ready to move, telling Hannah to thank her brother for the heads up before she starts walking away. She does, and when Hannah takes that final measurement, her eyes practically pop out of her head at what the tape says. They're both just standing there in total silence until Phyllis finally speaks up and calls out for Marie-senpai. Her face suddenly gets super intense and creepy as she points out to a confused Hannah that while their height and waist are identical, their chest and hip sizes are way too different. Asking her in a terrifying voice, "Isn't that a little weird?" As Zephyrus strolls through town, he's actually pretty hyped that his body and height haven't changed one bit in 5 whole years. He walks into a jewelry shop, points right at a $300,000 MP recovery necklace, and has the nerve to ask for a massive 130,000 dinars. He doesn't back down and starts making a deal, offering up his starter loot and promising to grind for even more, which actually gets the clerk's attention. The deal is officially sealed, and Zephyrus signs the contract, bragging that he'll pay 100 grand a year for the necklace and cover the rest on credit by selling off tons of materials. Since low-level loot is super rare right now, he easily scores a side quest to deliver the items for a true spirit necklace that buffs his defense and mana. When he gets back, Marie greets him with a big smile asking if Hannah's order is almost done and if he got his own stuff, but even though he says yes, he can tell her excitement is totally forced. Her happy act vanishes in a second, and her face completely breaks as she realizes how messed up things really are. Zephyrus notices Marie and Hannah acting all strange, but he decides to just drop it and asks Hannah to join him for a dungeon run. She's totally hyped and says He and Hannah pull up to this massive stone tunnel, and he explains they're here to scavenge and mine the old dungeon while Hannah just stares at how huge the place is. Right before they head in, Hannah asks if they're making a boss report. So he explains there's 1 beginner and 9 basic dungeon types before telling her to hurry up so they can finally get mocked. He jumped straight into a fight with the dungeon boss, a massive armor golem, following the usual plan of smashing through weak monsters to reach the bottom floor where he noticed the golem's top half was way too heavy, making it a total weak spot. His plan was simple. Use every drop of magic on the boss, fall back to the 9th floor, and spend his recovery time digging for resources while his mana filled back up. Hannah stood there holding her pickaxe looking totally lost, asking if they were actually going to dig, and he just gave her a big smile and said they definitely were. He told her to hurry up while swinging his pickaxe, wishing his phone could play some hype background music for a moment like this. She watched him work with sweat on her face, totally shocked and curious as his pickaxe slammed into the rocks. They were surrounded by massive piles of ore, and it was honestly crazy how much they found in a mine that was supposed to be empty, but he explained that since it's a dungeon, he peeked over the massive pile they'd built up to check her mana, and since she was fully recharged, he said it was time to go hunt the boss, leaving Hannah totally stunned. Anna realized they were totally crushing it thanks to that true spirit necklace and its insane MP recovery. This thing was a beast, letting them wreck the boss 14 times in just an hour, and he just hit level 17 and felt totally ready to crush the next 6 rounds. So when Hannah worried about packing all that loot, he just grinned and said he was done digging and ready for a massive victory. He got his energy back and shouted that they needed to pack up fast, and Hannah was totally hyped to help him out. He braced himself as his shield tanked the golem's massive stone punch, while Hannah yelled from a safe distance for Zephyrus to keep pushing forward. The golem exploded in a crazy flash of light, and as the dust settled, Zephyrus checked his loot. 18 wooden boxes and 2 silver ones felt pretty mid, but hitting level. Now that the work is finally done, he tells her to get changed so they can start their deliveries, and Hannah is totally hyped, even wondering if that other girl named Hannah is going to join them this time. The deal is done, and both screens flash 382,000 to show the payment officially went through. Zephyrus thanks the jeweler for the gear and says sorry for the weird request, but the guy is totally chill about it. As he heads out, Zephyrus promises to stack up more mirror and come back for another shopping spree later. They step back onto the street as a notification pings to confirm the delivery quest is finished. And while Zephyrus says they're heading to Marie Senpai's place next, Hana is. She figures boss loot should pay out big time, and Zephyrus suddenly shouts that her balance is actually skyrocketing. Her face goes totally blank, completely shocked by what she's seeing on the screen. He looks at his screen and smirks at the massive total, thinking Hannah's going to be hyped, while Marie watches her just stand there in a total daze, barely able to whisper the word. It's all way too much for her, and with her eyes spinning, Hannah falls right back into Zephyrus's arms. But the moment he catches her, a brand new skill called intuition. The second his new skill kicks in, he feels a super weird vibe and wonders why his arm is suddenly pulsing with its own gut feel. She leans right against him, and he suddenly realizes she's way more grown up than he ever noticed. That thought hits him like a truck, and when his intuition skill goes off again, he's so rattled he can barely keep it together. He looks up from the ground and sees Marie standing right over him with a totally blank face, her eyes wide and pitch black as she stares him down with this super creepy intensity. Seeing that thing sends a massive wave of panic straight through him. He realizes instantly that things are looking really bad. He's scared that if he even looks away for a second, Hannah finally wakes up and snaps him out of it, kneeling down to ask if he's okay while roasting him for losing his cool over some cash and telling him to get back on his feet. He stands up and tells Marie he's moving to the intermediate level after one last run for beginner materials, leaving her totally shocked that they're finally done with low-tier loot. He turns to a shocked Hannah with a super serious look and drops his real plan. He's starting a guild. She's so shocked by what he just said that her jaw literally drops. Hannah finally snaps out of it and asks if he's picked his team yet, but he admits he's just starting with the other first years, which reminds her of the strict rules. She warns them that getting the upperclassmen involved usually just makes things a total mess. Later that night, he's wide awake with his mind racing, thinking about how guilds are easily the coolest part of the whole dungeon scene. He remembers his past life where he spent all his time playing the game version of this world. In Denkatsu, you couldn't do anything cool like quests or big battles without joining a guild. He says the best part of starting a guild is getting your own room. And as you level up from F rank all the way to S rank, you unlock some seriously awesome perks. He explains that F rank housing is basically just a classroom for 5 to 10 people. And while ranking up unlocks more rooms and bigger parties, he remembers only using these spots. He's totally pumped to show them their first big goal of hitting C rank, since that gets the guild a house on C Road and even their own shop. Later that night, he's chilling in bed thinking about building his squad, since being C rank means he needs at least 10 members to make it official. If he wants to reach that legendary 3, he's still stressing over the problem, thinking about how in a game he could just pick the exact classes he needed, but out here there's basically nobody left to hire. Until suddenly, it hits him like a truck. He can just recruit the brand new first years before they pick a job and basically build them from scratch like a video game character, and he feels like a total idiot for missing something so obvious just because he was having way too much fun with real-life dinkets. Now that his plan is ready, he doesn't waste a single second and heads straight into the Stillwater dungeon the very next day. After the mission, he checks out his loot and sees he scored 8 boxes and a rare dagger. Talk about a massive payday. People definitely noticed his skills, and another adventurer named Anna gives him props for hitting that alligator lizard's tail exactly 12 times. He's grinning ear to ear because all that hard work scored him. He's always been a solo player, so getting hyped up by everyone feels amazing and totally new, and he decides to keep the momentum going by spending his fresh stat points while he checks if Hannah boosted her alchemy and mixing to level 10, and she's all set, even picking up a new skill called material return, while he's super hyped because after wrapping things up in that shiny crystal dungeon, he says the place was actually pretty sweet and suggests they just head home since it's still early. They pass by some water, and since it's totally safe, he wants to use his fishing skill, but Hannah points out he doesn't even have a rod, so he decides to just try again later. As they head out of the dungeon, Hannah thanks him for all the loot they grabbed, and he asks if it's actually enough for what she needs. She tells him everything's cool, so he goes over his big to-do list. Head back to change, maybe visit Marie's senpai, and get some alchemy practice in, before asking what she's planning to do. Hannah's got fire in her eyes as she announces her big plan. She's going to find some new recruits for their guild. She admits it's getting pretty lonely with just the two of them and says they need to aim way higher, but Zephyrus just tells her not to sweat it. He nods and says, yeah, but you can totally see his face turning a little red. He starts by saying yes, but then he gets totally serious. He looks her right in the eyes and promises he's going to stay with her forever. Hannah's face just lights up because she's standing under the falling leaves. She thanks him for what he said, and he just gives her a chill yeah in return. Zephyrus finishes the delivery quest and scores a 10-use patch sticker ticket, which he's super hyped to take. Marie asks if he's hitting the intermediate dungeon. Marie shows off this rare, gentle shovel with a floral handle she found in a treasure chest, and it's actually insane because it has level 3 gathering and doubles every single item you collect. She actually found a shovel with 3 whole skills on it. Maria flexes the tool and asks if he finally sees how awesome she is, saying she's down to sell it to him since they saw him. She gives him a playful wink and drops the price, exactly 10 million years, leaving Zephyrus so shocked he begs for a loan. But Marie shuts him down, saying she only takes full cash upfront with no payment plans. He tells her to chill out, admitting he's nowhere near having 10 million mirror and can't even compete with her, while Marie just stands there holding that super valuable shovel. She suddenly slashes the price to just $1 million, saying it's just an old hand-me-down even if it came from a gold box, and Zephyrus buys it so fast that Marie is actually stunned by how quickly it's over. With the shopping done, Zephyrus is hyped that Hannah's gear is finally finished, and Marie confirms it's absolutely cracked since 8 guild members worked on it together, which Zephyrus is. They walk past a mannequin showing off the finished armor, a sleek dark dress with fire patterns along the bottom and a giant bow on the back. His face totally lights up as he tells Marie he's hyped to see Hannah in that new gear tomorrow, and since he's so pumped, he shouts that it's finally time to hit their... They pull up to this massive, intimidating school building where Zephyrus explains it's the main hub for the Dungeon Exploration Combat course, and he makes it clear he only wants to recruit people who actually... He scanned the crowded hall and saw older students everywhere hunting for new recruits, giving a confident smirk because he knew everyone wants a star player on their squad. While he's trying to figure out his next move, a calm voice suddenly asks if he's the hero, and he spins around to see a girl with long dark hair standing right there. She apologized for the surprise and introduced herself as a third year named Kiri, then gave him a sweet smile while insisting he call her Kiri-chan senpai, which was way more casual than he expected. He told her he expected her to be all business, but she's actually a super fun senior. After thanking her for the nice intro, he introduced himself as Zephyrus, a first visois. She cut right to the chase, revealing she's the submaster of the A-rank guild Thousand Swords Flakal, and looked him dead in the eye to invite him to join their... He was totally blown away by the massive offer, and the other students started whispering about how they'd never get an invite like that with their low ranks. He finally realized how insane an A-rank guild really is, since only 6 of them exist with a tiny group of just 240 elite members. He knew getting picked as an elite out of 20,000 students was a massive deal, but he just gave them a polite smile and said no because he wanted to create his own. Everyone's jaws hit the floor when he said no. The other students started freaking out because nobody rejects an A-rank guild, and even Kiri was left totally speechless. He apologized for the surprise and said he was hyped she invited him, but he stood his ground because he never breaks his own rules. He says sorry for not being what she wanted, but Kiri thinks that's actually super cool and likes him even more, so he tells her she can come find him anytime before May if she... He's dead set on joining Remind, an A-rank guild that only accepts the absolute best elites with advanced jobs. Later, he's chatting with Sierra about how guilds hire people and realizes they only take high-level students because weak ones just slow everyone down, which basically means the school is totally running out of pros. He smirks, realizing A-rank guilds are way different than he thought, so he decides to go see how they really roll for himself. He turns back to Kiri and asks if she actually knows him, acting like he's not even worth a master's time. But she shuts him down by revealing she knows all about his rare hero job, his crazy talent, and how he broke every record in those first 2 dungeons. She then reveals she knows he's about to hit a lower intermediate dungeon, and Zephyrus is totally floored by how fast she got the scoop, which actually ends up surprising her too. He explains she had a hunch from the start, but now she's totally sure he isn't stuck up, and there's no way she'd pass up the chance to recruit someone this talented. She starts hyping him up like crazy, saying anyone who can run forever is destined for greatness, and when she claims he doesn't even see walls as obstacles, he gets totally embarrassed. He's hyped that she caught every detail, but since she's gassing him up way too much, he takes the win while telling her to stay humble. Hyped up by her words, he brags about finally crushing the Stillwater underground dungeon and says he's hitting the wild herb grassland tomorrow, claiming he'll probably beat it on his very first try. He's soaking up all the praise, a feeling he never got back in his gamer days when everyone just hated on his skills. Just being noticed feels amazing. As Kiri turns to, while they're walking, she mentions she's heard of another student who's also got some insane potential. He's totally confused about how potential works since game moves and real life are worlds apart. So Kiri points out a student named Sedan training nearby and explains her guild is Scout. She's totally convinced Sedan is a beast since it's super rare for anyone to master his brutal training, and you can tell she's desperate to get him on her team. Zephyrus watches Sedan go all out on the training gear, wondering what it actually means to have real potential. She suddenly points in random directions, catching him off guard as she spots other top-tier first years nearby. Kiri's seen enough and decides to head out, telling Zephyrus she's going back to scouting, but will pay him back with some juicy leaks later. And Zephyrus, once she's gone, he wanders through the halls and spots everyone from the red-haired swordsman to the elf Sierra totally locked into their training. The red-haired kid flashes a smug grin, but inside his head he's realizing he has absolutely no clue who's actually the real deal. He knows the game, but he realizes that spotting someone with real talent or raw instinct is on a whole different level. Zephyrus stood there thinking, totally sure he knew more about this world than anyone else, but he was so clueless about levels that he actually wondered if it was something he could eat. He was still stuck in his head trying to pick his team, wondering if he should go for the flashy ones or just find someone with a good heart, but right as he decided to go with his gut, Zephyrus spots Sierra and tells her it feels like ages since they last met. But she reminds him it's only been a week since the entrance ceremony, making him realize his life has been so wild that time is just flying by. She wondered why he showed up, figuring a pro like him didn't need help finding work anymore. Zephyrus just flashed a smile and told her the truth. He was planning to start his... She reminded him that first years are nowhere near ready to start a guild, but Zephyrus just shrugged and said he's basically set once he finds a crew. Then he started hitting her with a ton of questions. She suddenly locked eyes with her and straight up asked, "Yo, what's your level?" Her status screen pops up, showing she's a level 20 hero, and her eyes go wide as she thinks there's no way this is actually happening. He just flashed a massive smug grin as he felt everyone's eyes burning with jealousy, because now the whole crowd knew he was actually a level 20 hero. She stood there totally frozen, her brain trying to make sense of it all, until Zephyrus noticed her spacing out and called her name to snap her back. He kept pushing his pitch and double-checked if Sierra was really down to be their tank, and once she said yes, Zephyrus got totally fired up and realized he couldn't slack off anymore. He keeps trying to recruit her by asking what job she wants and offering to help, but Sierra just looks away and says her dream class hasn't even shown up yet, so she thinks it's totally hopeless. Suddenly, it all clicks, and he realizes she's talking about a secret job that regular people don't even know exists. And while Sierra thinks he's totally clueless, he explains that famous jobs like princess are locked to specific races, then points to his own level 20 hero status to show how some roles have totally unique requirements. He figures that since Sierra is an earl's daughter, her tank role must be something way more special, so he gets hyped and tries to talk her into joining his guild. He notices everyone staring and tells her they need to move, but as he starts leading her off, a shocked Sierra tells him to wait. He grabs her hand tight and looks her right in the eyes, promising he's the one who can actually help her reach her goal. Once they get some privacy, Sierra calls him out for being so bold. But Zephyr just smirks and tells her he knows exactly what she's after. The Shield Princess class. He keeps going and drops a bombshell. He knows exactly how to unlock the Shield Princess class, remembering a girl from a legendary quest who was actually Sierra's great-grandmother. She's totally freaking out and makes him say that again, but Zephyrus just keeps his cool, explaining that if he knows how to become a hero, then knowing about another rare class is basically a given. He lays out his deal with total confidence. He'll help Sierra get her job, but if she actually becomes the Shield Princess, she has to join his guild. Sierra stared him down, totally confused why he'd go this far for her, and demanded to know what his deal was. He looked her right in the eyes with a serious face and told her that if she's just trying to join another top guild, then they're officially done talking. She calls him out for picking her just for her looks and job, making him blush as he admits he said something cringe because she's so pretty, but he quickly gets serious and reveals his brain was spinning as he tried to remember all the game's rules. The princess class was totally broken, but you needed a massive amount of fame to unlock it. The Shield Princess. He looked at the odds and knew it was a total long shot. A brand new guild with zero clout had no chance of recruiting someone like her. But he wasn't backing down because her face turned totally serious as she told him that if he could really pull off the impossible with his secret knowledge, she was all in, and she straight up asked to join his guild right then. Sierra, a blonde girl with a super serious look, walks right up to Zephyrus and asks to join his guild, while he just smirks because he totally saw this coming. She's impressed by the quick choice, but worries she'll just steal their info and run. So she promises that as a noble, she'd never be that shady and always pays back her debts. She admits he's totally right to be worried and offers her family's official contract to seal the deal, making him stop and really think about it. He tosses the contract aside, telling her he wants real teammates, not just people tied down by boring paperwork. With a confident smirk, he declares that once they hit S rank, she'll want to stay forever anyway, and she's totally blown away by his bold claim. She notices how confident he is, so he puffs out his chest and brags that it's all because he's a hero. She finally admits he actually has the skills to back up his big talk, and he just smirks, telling her that if she's joining the team, now is the perfect time to get in on the action. That serious look finally melts into a real smile, totally won over by his insane confidence. He notices her mood shift and tells her she looks way better when she's smiling, then gestures for her to sit down. He's about to drop the secrets on how to unlock the Shield Princess class, claiming he knows everything because he's a hero, but she just laughs and tells him his logic makes zero sense. He starts listing the insane rules. She's already a princess, but now she has to tank 100 hits and parry 100 more with a shield. Stay. As it all clicks, she whispers that it's no wonder it stayed hidden, and he just nods, saying he totally saw that coming. Her eyes narrow as she demands to know who he actually is, finally realizing why this secret job stayed hidden for so long. Fighting monsters without a job is basically a death wish, and since she just watched him with a totally blank face as Zephyrus gave a simple but crazy explanation for how he knew so much, he was a hero. He just smirked and laughed off the hero title like it was some lame excuse, then jumped up and told her they needed to start right now, asking if she had her level 1 alchemy bracelet and gear ready, which Sierra quietly said she did. He's totally sure they can smash through every unlock condition before the day ends. He tells her to just swing by his room in the noble dorms once she's ready. Sierra looks a bit later, right outside the fancy noble dorms. Zephyr's holding a wiggly slime and getting ready for some seriously weird training. He grunts and chucks the creature into the room, but Sierra is already standing her ground with her shield up, looking dead serious and ready for the hit. The whole place was a total wreck from their chaos. And as another slime zoomed through the air, Zephyrus explained they were just playing a wild game of slime catchball. He came up with a genius strategy because the game's system counted throwing slimes as real attacks, letting them crush the Shield Princess requirement of blocking 100 hits in record time. Even though it made sense, Sierra was totally creeped out and wondered if they were making a huge mistake because this whole world just felt super wrong to her. He looked back at her with a smirk, admitting that even he felt a little bad for using such a crazy, over-the-top plan. She didn't even flinch, staying totally silent as another slime smashed into her shield and did absolutely nothing. After that weird training wraps up, Zephyr is hyped because they crushed it in under 30 minutes. And while he's already planning how to unlock her next jobs, Sierra is just standing there. He gave her a super awkward congrats for waking up, and right then, a notification popped up showing she'd unlocked the Shield Princess class, but her face stayed totally blank. She finally spoke up and admitted the whole thing felt totally weird and crazy, but she quickly apologized because she knew he was just keeping the promise he made her. She apologized again and headed back to her room, but as she turned to leave, he stopped her and handed over a stack of papers, telling her to read them later and stay strong. She scans the document and finds a full breakdown of the Shield Princess class, including a secret tip on how to build the ultimate version. She stared down at the papers and gave a quiet, super sad thank you. She watched her stumble up the stairs, looking totally shaky. A scary thought popped into his head. Did he actually just break her spirit? She stopped at the top and looked back, but her face was